Vikings right now they're a star-studded offensive team and a star-studded coaching staff. What will the Jets and Aaron Rodgers see defensively? Because they don't have a lot of high-profile defenders, yet they're getting a lot of pressure on the quarterback. What do the Vikings do, and what will Aaron see defensively?
Look, obviously Rodgers has seen everything, Colin, in his career, but that doesn't mean you don't do what you do against him and try to slow down the process. And the Vikings are a really difficult defense to play against because what they do, what Brian Flores does so well, is he'll line up 6 or 7 along the defensive front. And you have to account for those people. You can't make assumptions about who might come or who might not come. So they demand that you protect, and usually they demand that you protect with more than 5. So now you have a back or a tight end that even if they're not a primary pass protector, they need to chip. They need to do something to be part of the protection. So now you're losing an eligible receiver as a primary route runner. And so what the Vikings often do is from these 6 or 7-man fronts is then they'll drop people out. Sometimes they'll rush 3. So you end up with 8 in coverage versus maybe 3 receivers or 4 receivers at most. They do this exceptionally well. That's what they did to C.J. Stroud and the Texans a few weeks ago. So they're an extremely difficult defense to play against. Because they don't necessarily have great people, they will give up yards at times. But as you probably know, the Jets last week really struggled in pass protection. Yeah. They played the rookie Fashanu from Penn State at right tackle, and he looked stiff. He had a really difficult time one-on-one blocking versus Jonathan Cooper from the Broncos.
Okay, so Philadelphia is a well-run franchise that is in sort of disarray. Defense hasn't been great for years. Jalen Hurts was wonderful with Shane Steichen. Now they look lost. There's multiple reports. There's fissures in the Sirianni-Jalen Hurts relationship. Let's just talk Jalen Hurts, the quarterback. What is happening? We know the turnovers have been amped up for the last year. What are you seeing on film?
Right.
What are you seeing?
Well, I think with Jalen, and I'm going to just point out the first play of the game from last week. They called a very basic play. It's quarterbacking 101. And I think people can probably visualize this if they're listening on radio. What they called was a mirrored route combination. Curl flat to each side and a sit in front of the quarterback over the ball. That's a very basic staple concept. There was a throw to be made. Jalen is not throwing basic route concepts. Okay, so it becomes very hard for a coach. Kellen Moore is their new coordinator, and I'm sure a lot of people are blaming him for their offense. But you have to be able to make those throws. And I think they're also searching for an identity. I'm sure Kellen Moore is trying to figure out how you get the best out of Jalen Hurts, get him into the game comfortably, which they're trying to do, and yet at the same time make sure that Saquon Barkley is a foundation of what you do. And my sense is they're still searching for that identity. But Jalen Hurts has been struggling with basic concepts, and until he really executes those, it becomes difficult.
All right, so Caleb Williams is somebody. Here's the positive on Caleb Williams. Every week, we've seen steps. And, you know, what you get worried about is when you see a quarterback go up, back, the roller coaster. Now, you rarely get Jaden Daniels where a guy is just excellent. But with Caleb, I am seeing the accuracy, the passer rating. So against the Rams, is there anything with Caleb you saw? I felt he looked more settled. My take was from the view, he just felt a little more settled. He had a run game. That's what I saw.
Yeah, I think the run game's important. I think they dialed it down a bit. They gave him easier throws. He did miss some throws that you have to make, and we'll see if that continues. I didn't really view him as a scattershot passer at USC, and he's been a little scattershot, which probably leads me to believe he's just not a comfortable player yet. I think we have to look at it this way with all young quarterbacks, Colin. There's a sense now, because so many of them come into the league, they're brands. We've been talking about these guys for years and years, seemingly since they're 12 years old. So I think a lot of people think these guys come in the league, and if they don't play well right away, it's because the coaching isn't good. It's the reverse. These guys have to learn how to play NFL quarterback, which is different than playing college quarterback. So when Caleb Williams struggles a bit and has to learn, that's a perfectly normal thing. That doesn't mean he can't play NFL quarterback, but it takes time. And so much is involved with what they're asked to do. You've got to dial it down. You mentioned Jaden Daniels, and he's played exceptionally well. But when you watch his tape, Colin, they don't ask him to make a lot of difficult throws. Now, he's made some that have been absolutely special. There's no question about it. He's played at a high level. I mean, he's only missed 19 throws in 4 games, only 19 incompletions. That's ridiculous. But when you watch the tape, you see a lot of basic, easy throws by NFL standards, and that's the right thing to do. You're trying to allow these quarterbacks to grow into the NFL game.
All right, now I want to go to somebody that's older than Caleb Williams, has more experience, Justin Fields. He's on his second team.
Yep.
So in Chicago, he was not a good fourth quarter quarterback. He could be turnover prone. Again, I felt a lot of times that he didn't see the field well. So he goes to Pittsburgh, a better run operation. Arthur Smith, obviously a good enough coordinator to become a head coach in Atlanta. So it's Arthur Smith and Justin Fields. So what are you seeing with Justin now in this organization? What is he doing now he didn't in Chicago? Or maybe it was a staff issue.
I think he's somewhat similar in terms of how he plays. I think he's one of those quarterbacks that he's not necessarily a natural timing and rhythm player. So that's never going to be really his game. I'm not sure you can teach someone how to be really refined. Like he's never going to become C.J. Stroud. That's not going to happen. So now what you're relying on is really defining the reads and the throws for him very, very cleanly so that he can feel really comfortable delivering the ball. And then he does always have that outside of structure dimension to his game.
Yeah.
And I mean, in watching the tape last week, there were not that many throws from the pocket. I'm talking about real throws. I'm not just talking about, really short throws. I'm talking about where he drops back and drives the ball at the intermediate levels. You didn't see many of those at all. That's not really his game. So the question becomes, can you become a higher level quarterback if you can't do that? There's no question he can make quote unquote plays, but he's not by nature a timing rhythm guy.
Okay. Two things I want to concentrate on. So Rashee Rice, we think is out for the year, but they're going to test him again. So it did feel like to us, Greg, he had gone from kind of an inconsistent, talented kid. In the first couple of weeks, you're like, oh, he's a 1 now. I'm not saying Jamar Chase, but it feels like he's going to be an 80-catch volume number 1. If he's out, based on what you've seen, what does that do to the Kansas City offense?
Well, I think it probably signifies that Kelsey comes back as that guy, because Kelsey, you can certainly move all around the formation. He's formation flexible and versatile, so they'll focus on him a lot more. We saw them take the deep shot last week to Worthy. We saw them go to Worthy at the end of the game on a critical 3rd down that won the game. So I think Worthy is a guy who, ultimately, watching his college tape, I thought he could be more than just a vertical threat. But again, he's a rookie, so that may take time. You're seeing the vertical throw here. I think they need to get him more involved doing other things than just being a vertical dimension.
Yeah.
We'll see how it plays out. I think right now Mahomes is not necessarily a comfortable player, and maybe it's because of the receiving core. We don't know that.
Yeah.
But do you remember a few years ago when Mahomes went through a bad stretch?
Yes.
And Andy Reid kind of dialed him down a bit and got him back on track? That may need to happen again.
Okay. So Davante Adams, I've said before, college furnishes the NFL with about 15 good receivers a year. Be careful about overpaying them.
Yes.
But there are players like Davante Adams, especially in this toxic situation with the Jets. If they go get blown out by Minnesota, this thing could unravel quickly, and he could be the juice outside of Garrett Wilson that maybe you need. I don't know. It feels like it would work because Aaron's played with him. So give me a kind of a breakdown. A lot of these receivers, Nico Collins isn't Xavier Worthy, isn't Cooper Kupp, isn't Puka Nacua. They're all different. What does Davante bring to the table? What dimension would he help the Saints or the Jets with?
Well, I think that what Davante Adams is, and it's funny because I sort of did a survey this summer talking to people about the top 5 receivers in the league, and he always was in that category in any conversation I had. So I would say that what he brings is the fact that he can line up inside, he can line up outside. He's a really refined route runner, so he can win one-on-one. That's become the key thing. You have to be able to win one-on-one because in this league, when teams line up in what we call 3-by-1 sets, Colin, where there's a single receiver to the short side of the field, that receiver has to be able to win one-on-one. And the teams that don't have that guy, that really handicaps their offense quite a bit. Davante Adams can still do that. He's not a true vertical dimension, although because he's so refined as a route runner, he can get vertical at times. But he can win one-on-one, and that's a critical, critical element. You see that all. How many throws do we see now in the league where it's